from myself. Go dust them off, put them back up on the shelf. Kiss my little baby girl is in need. Am I coming out of left field? Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. I've been feeling it since 1966 now. Might be over now, but I feel it still. We could fight a war for peace. Give in to that easy living, goodbye to my hopes and dreams. Stop flipping for my enemies. We could wait until the walls come down. Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. Let me kick it like it's 1986 now. Might be over now, I can feel it still. Not I had your fill, I can feel it still.
Hello, and welcome to Spring Studios, Studio X. So we're here to discuss the state of beauty today. And I firstly want to thank everyone for being here, for supporting us. We really believe that events are still the lifeblood of New York City and really appreciate all of the support as our city gradually reopens and comes back to life again. So I have with me three very prominent leaders in the beauty industry. I have Ceci Kurzman, who is a prominent investor and philanthropist and sits on multiple boards, including Revlon and Warner Music. I have Antonia Opiah, who's a founder and entrepreneur. She leads the Unruly.com beauty network with her sister, attracting over 1.5 million women a month, and has recently launched Yoluchi, which is an at-home styling app. I have Alex Williams, lastly with me from TikTok, who is a creative strategist, a connoisseur of Gen Z and millennial insights, having worked at Complex previously. She also has an MFA from Parsons. Welcome, ladies. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So I think that, as you've just seen in our clip to open the panel, Spring is really invested in the idea of beauty as really an intersection of both culture and commerce. So I think we just wanted to investigate how the pandemic and our current conditions have changed perceptions around beauty today. So I think firstly, I'll open it up with asking, what is beautiful today? Maybe Antonia in Paris, we'll throw it to you first.
And other people around the world this question, and at my age now, the point that I am in life, I've come to see beauty as something that should make you feel good. It's also a form of nonverbal communication. So it's your statement to the world without having to open your mouth. It's a form of self-expression. And just thinking about the larger topic of this particular conversation, I think one of the impacts of the pandemic is, given that we've all been locked down in our homes, the social aspect, the statement making of beauty has sort of been eliminated. And now we're sort of having to think about, what does beauty mean when there's no one around to look at us? How are we using it to make ourselves feel good, especially when the world around us feels like it's kind of crashing down and burning?
I feel as if beauty has changed, and being beautiful, the definition of that has changed. For me, the definition is more so tying it between your feminine and masculine energies. And I think for so long, the world has told you that beautiful is such a feminine attribute. It's a definition that's defined by others. But in the past few months, no one could really tell you if you're beautiful or not but yourself. So I think that standard needs to become more consistent, and beauty needs to be more of a standard that's specific to the individual than more so everyone in the world telling you what is beauty and what is deemed beautiful.
I would only add to that at this time in particular, when we're looking at beauty as Antonia mentioned, a form of self-expression and identity, I think purpose is very much becoming tied to one's identity and how one is communicating with the outside world in terms of how, how they want to represent themselves. And I think it becomes a very holistic concept of beauty, not just your aesthetic beauty, but how you're kind of being active in the world and participating in the world at large.
Right, I think you guys touched on things that are so interesting about like who is the audience for beauty, and that audience seems to be more and more yourself, right? As the public space becomes more limited, as Antonia said, it's more about the gaze of the self and the gaze of one, rather than the gaze of the many. And I think, and maybe like in exploring that a little bit more in the digital space, Alex, you can tell us like how the TikTok community is really bringing that to the fore?
Yeah, beauty on TikTok is very interesting, and I kind of fell into this addiction to the category myself. I think our users are really championing the idea that no one can really tell you who you are, no one can really tell you how to express yourself, and no one can really tell you what it means to tell a story that's subjective to you. And with that relates to beauty, right? I think the beauty category gave our users a huge opportunity to kind of hone in on the things that they tie to as it relates to whether it be color cosmetics, whether it be skincare, or whether it be a specific product. It's more so, how does this make me feel? And that's kind of the sole purpose of our platform. You have people talking about what they're feeling, you have people talking about what they're experiencing, and you have people talking about what is it exactly that makes me feel beautiful. And whether that be through a makeup tutorial, whether that be through a story in itself, our platform really champions our users to kind of talk about who they are as it relates to how good they feel in that narrative.
And also just to explore that, I guess, Ceci, from a more macro perspective, like, do you see health and wellness sort of being more of a factor in beauty, given our condition?
Well, obviously, health is the overriding theme that's consuming the world right now, and it's, to the point of obsessiveness, and so, we are looking at this whole concept of self-care, whether it's wearing a mask, staying indoors, being sort of mindful of one's behavior, changing our behavioral standards. And I think that extends to beauty as well. Obviously, with self-care is essential because we're really challenged the service industries, which have been very compromised by this, the salons and the stylists, and have, now you're bringing everything in home and you're having to take on this world, and it has to be sort of cohesive and holistic in that self-care is outside in, inside out, and I think we're taking hold of that in home, and it's a very different experience, and this is where content has become our outreach and our inputs in terms of how we manage our self-care.
Right. And I think also just in terms of industry's trends, we're seeing skincare really growing in terms of its market share, sort of outperforming color cosmetics right now. I mean, do you guys sort of have theories on why that might be?
I personally think that the brands that have the multiple effect strategy down, the multiple benefit strategy down, are doing really well. Like I said, beauty's subjective, and people just want to feel good and take care of themselves. So if you're offering me something that adds value to self-expression like color cosmetics, but I can also take care of my skin, that's a win-win. And if you're offering me the opportunities to still feel good in my skin, whether I have this color attribute on or off, that's a win-win. So skincare is doing well because users and I think consumers want to feel good in their natural skin. However, if you can add that other value, that's a plus one. The other value shouldn't take away from the fact that you're taking care of yourself as well.
Antonia, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was going to add to that. I think one of the questions, I think my sister actually says this all the time. She says, if my skin was perfect, I would never wear foundation.
Yeah.
So anything that's giving women or women like her the opportunity to have perfect skin or skin that they don't need to hide, then obviously people are gonna invest in that. So I feel like that's one of the things that's driving the push towards skincare.
And I would only add on a more basic and tactical level for color cosmetics. Listen, we don't have events that we have to attend anymore. For those of us who might put a face on to go to work, we're not doing that anymore. And then obviously the mass culture now is transferring sort of what we need to do and where we need to sort of focus more energy. Is it hair? Is it skin. So I think anything that involves these sort of transferable properties, as Alex says, are winning, and things that are traditionally about glamour are not.
Right. And also, I think we wanted to touch on a global perspective on beauty, and I think what's interesting about global right now, it's almost like the global is increasingly local, right? Because we're all at different stages of opening, and in America, even by state, it feels very different where you are. And obviously, we have the EU and we have APAC, and they're all, I think, depending on where they are, people are in very different psychological places. And I guess, what does that mean for beauty? I think, for instance, Alex, on TikTok, you have obviously so much engagement in so many different markets. Like, are you seeing anything sort of pop up across the markets that are, different or interesting insights?
Yeah, I would say we come from a place where there was this stigma that the Western standard of beauty was more prominent, right? Like, everyone would try to achieve this idea that they wanted to have this beauty standard that was very much so synonymous to what the West gave them. And that's an archaic way of thinking now if you're thinking of beauty. I think a lot of people are honing in on their interests. A lot of people are honing in on where they're from. A lot of people are honing into their cultural backgrounds and their needs to show who they are as a person. And it's no longer to achieve this Western standard of beauty. And I think understanding those local markets, understanding these different communities, understanding the different niches of your consumer, and being more inclusive with that is an opportunity to grow your brand. So yeah, I think that beauty is shifting to be more local because consumers are showing that they're no longer trying to achieve this one stigma, this one standard of what beauty is, and kind of understanding where they're from, what they're interested in, and what's happening in the world immediately around them.
Right. Antonia, also being in Paris, are you seeing any differences? I know your sister is based in New York, and your business is run sort of out of many different cities, so are you seeing any perspectives cross-culturally?
Well, I think across, because I was in the States earlier this year, around when COVID hit, and I would just say, I think the one thing that I've seen or I've noticed in both countries is the fact that the more confined we are, the more it feels like people need beauty and need beauty services. I think there was a saying earlier in the pandemic that the salons become the new speakeasy, like people were going to the salon sort of I guess sneaking in and to salons to get their hair done or to get nails done. And I think the more we're deprived from these so-called non-essentials, the more sort of they start to feel more essential, because we do have this need to live and not just survive. And it's little things in life, like getting your hair done, getting your nails done, that kind of gives you a little bit something more, adds something more to your day. And I feel like I felt that here in Paris as well as in New York and even in Florida.
I love that the salon is the modern speakeasy.
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
I love that.
It's like, you got your haircut? How did you get a haircut?
It's so essential. Yeah, what are your secrets?
Can I actually ask a question?
Yeah, please.
I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, but you just spoke, and I'm just wondering where you're seeing these people that are, I guess, lack of a better word, rejecting or embracing other forms of beauty, because it sounds really great, and I'd love to be exposed to them. Are you seeing them online, in pockets online, or where are these people?
Can you repeat the beginning part of your question?
Yeah, so where are you seeing these people that are embracing different, standards of beauty outside of the Western standard?
Oh, TikTok. And that's not because I work there, it's honestly where I see it. And also, I think as I'm growing into who I am as a person and opening my eyes and expanding my brain and seeing what's happening around me, I do think people are finding more comfort in themselves. And I do think on my platform, because I'm looking for that specifically and I'm interested in that, it's being fed to me on my feed. And I'm seeing a lot of people kind of more so just expanding into who they are instead of conforming into what people are telling them they have to be. And it's not a one-off, it's more consistent. And I think there's a large opportunity to kind of champion those people, use these people to tell stories, because then it's like a domino effect, right? You have these people who feel so good in themselves, and it's kind of becoming the majority, but if we show that to the majority, then more people will start championing those narratives.
And do you think it's a younger demographic, or it's a mix?
I think it's the younger demographic that's influencing up. And I don't think it's stopping there. I am seeing more people intrigued by that. For instance, my mom. My mom is very intrigued by different narratives. She might not understand all of it, but she'll do the research. And I think by seeing more people embrace that, whether it's the younger generation or the older generation, it influences other people to tap into that curiosity. Because naturally, all humans are curious. You might not show it, but you go home and you do your weird Google search. And that's gonna show you like, hey, people are doing this and embracing the curiosities in themselves that they wanna kind of bring out inward, outward. And if you see other people doing it, then you'll be kind of influenced to do that yourself. But I will say, get on the platform, there's so many users who are showing you that they don't really care what you're telling them to do. They don't really care about what you're saying is beautiful. It's more so, this is who I am. And to see that comfort for me, it boosts my confidence, and it's very inspiring. As someone who's 30 and I'm not 22, it's more so like, okay, as I get older, I can still continue to do this. There isn't like a norm that's telling me that it has to stop, or there isn't a norm that's capping it and saying you can only do this in the privacy of your own home. You can show who you are to the world regardless of what part of the world that you're in.
Cool. So, Winston Churchill said, never waste a good crisis. So, what are some, Ceci, what are some business opportunities you're seeing emerge coming out of the pandemic?
Well, it's, you know, to your point, I think a lot of the businesses, beauty businesses, are focusing on the challenges. And you know, with challenge comes opportunity, because obviously when there's changed behavior, the disruptors are, you know, come to the fore. Mm-hmm. And as many businesses as are challenged, you're seeing a lot of businesses skyrocket as well. Again, the ones that are focused on in-home care, at-home solutions, by definition, they've become essential. Businesses that are heavily content focused, when we're looking for support, when we're looking for access, when we're looking for education, those who've really hit the nose on content are seeing enormous upticks. Obviously, anything related to personalization. When you're in home, the idea of being able to direct something that's individually targeted to you, to have content that's curated for you, to be able to be directed individually as to how to take care of yourself. All those brands are doing really well. I look at brands like Madison Reed or brands like Prose that are really hyper-focused on tailor-making things to the individual and supporting them in their, you know, in-home journey, which for many isn't easy. As you know, we talk about the salon speakeasy, but there are a lot of people who are absolutely beside themselves when they were forced to sort of manage themselves. And what they're finding through a lot of these brands that have really strong narratives and the ability to communicate is like, I can do this. You know, I can handle this. I'm actually very empowered to sort of take care of myself. And it gets back to the overriding theme that self-care has become really prominent.
Self-care and confidence, as you just spoke.
Absolutely.
Beauty, so,
Do you think that purchase intent kind of grew because people are at home taking care of themselves? Like, I have to learn how to cut my hair. I have to learn how to color my hair. I have to learn.
Absolutely. Listen, I certainly wouldn't choose to color my own hair, clearly. But it became essential. People were forced to do things that were outside the comfort zone, and I think for the most part have found that it's not quite as steep a mountain to climb. Now, that said, I think plenty of us are going to be rushing on back to the salons when they're open, because, you know, experts are experts. But I do think those brands have really communicated well and brought the experience, as much of the experience as possible, into the home, and also made it incredibly tailored to the individual, have had enormous success in this market.
great. Antonia, that's actually exactly what your Lucci does. Do you want to add to that a little bit? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I mean, get to that point, my business is literally a content commerce beauty platform for Black women. And so we started out with just content for Black women, and we then expanded into beauty services. So having at-home hairstyling services, in the New York area and recently in Los Angeles. And I would say that we have been in a pretty good position in this moment in time to cater to the changes that are happening in the space. First, content has always been an important part of the overall platform or ecosystem that we're building, just because I felt that it's one thing to inspire people to be beautiful or to inspire their next hairstyle or have conversations about, you know, things that are trending and how to take care of your hair, but it's another thing to go deeper beyond the surface, and we've made it a point to always explore the reasons behind the choices that we're making. And that's where we've had the most success in terms of the content that we've created, as well as building community around that content. And then to layer on top of that the actual service, to your point, there is a move towards having these services done at home because they are now becoming or feeling like they're more essential than they previously were. And in the beginning of the service of the pandemic, when New York completely shut down and specifically said salons couldn't work, and then same went for California, we did see a hit. But as soon as the phased reopening started, we saw a huge spike in sales. And the level of our sales it hasn't maintained the peak that we saw right when we reopened. A lot of that was due to pent-up demand, but they have been steady in the past couple months, and I think that just sort of speaks to what you guys have already been speaking about, the fact that we do need these services. There's only so much you can do by yourself, and there's almost always so much that you might even want to do on your own, even if you could do it. And so, yeah, our business is sort of, we've been, you know, I guess kind of flying through this phase of the pandemic, knock on wood.
Mm-hmm. And so we've also touched on content, right? I think it's growing so much because it's where we get all of our inspiration now and all of our guidance. You know, there's not as much interpersonal IRL interface, I think, to get that sort of beauty guidance. And I guess I'd love to turn it over to you, Alex, in terms of content. I guess, how do you see, you know, brands really getting into the TikTok community, into the TikTok sort of content conversation? Because it is, I think, daunting for certain brands. It's definitely an emergent platform. And you know, what would creators sort of tell brands if they had the opportunity?
Yeah, I really like this question. I think that it's something that we need to talk about a bit more when we're in rooms with each other, brands, beauty brands, and TikTok. It's more so like understanding it's a learning curve, but understanding where we are now. And I think that our creators, a lot of them have translated from different platforms, right? Some of them, this is the first platform that they started telling stories on. However, it's time to understand that we might not be capable of meeting them completely where they're at, but we have to focus on meeting each other in the middle. I think a large opportunity for brands to tap into a story that resonates with most is understanding the creators that they're working with. Mm-hmm. And by understanding the creators that they're working with, we can also find value in pushing forward the brand's purpose, but also find value in pushing forward the creator's purpose. It's kind of like a multi-pronged strategy. And there's multiple solutions to one problem. But if we're going to ask someone to use their platform and to include their personal stories within their platform to a brand, then you kind of have to meet them in the middle and understand who they are. And a lot of creators, no one's going to say that they don't want the bag. Everybody wants to do work. Everyone wants to work hard. But if you can work really hard and also still be yourself, which is the reason why they started working in this industry to begin with, then that's a win-win for both people.
It's much more of a dialogue between the brand and the creator.
Yeah, it's an open conversation. I imagine it to be, in a perfect world, if a creator can bring a brand to their kitchen and have dinner and say, hey, this is how we're gonna work tomorrow, then that's how we should be approaching the conversation. And I know sometimes it's hard to think that way because a lot of the times you're employing a creator and there's a solve that the brand wants to kind of attribute to the creativity that's coming from the creator. However, the solve might be more prominent if you have an actual conversation like, who are you? Talk to me about your content. What does your community like to see? Therefore, your engagement will be higher because the community is not compromising the content that they like just so a brand can get in front of them. And if you're going to get in front of this community, it's more so understanding what is the story that we're both trying to tell, and how can we keep all ends happy, the community, the creator, and the brand.
Great. So obviously no one has a crystal ball, but if you could make a prediction for the next year in beauty from cultural perspectives, content perspectives, business perspective, what might that be?
Well, I think, obviously everything has been accelerated. And I think we're living in Q4 2021 right now.
Yeah.
And with that said, I think people are talking about what it's going to be like when it goes back to normal. I don't think normal is what we've seen before. The term new normal is a little uncomfortable as well. I think it's just evolution. And the expectation that this pandemic exists, and when the shops open, when the vaccine arrives, that we're going to be right back where we started, isn't even possible. Behavior has shifted, behavior has changed, adoption is accelerated. For many, it's been painful, but it's been a process. And I think, certainly looking at the companies that are going to be successful going forward, they're not sitting on their hands waiting for, the light at the end of the tunnel. They're creating other, they're filling the void and filling the white space and moving towards, new ways to build in this business, which is where we're going, not where we've been. And I think those companies are going to be the most successful. I think the ones who've kind of diversified their strategy away from what we were accustomed to are going to be enormously successful. And I think, it takes a bit of a wait and see. Obviously, as you say, there's no crystal ball, but I think the smart companies are already innovating for what's going to happen after.
I agree with you, and I love that you kind of touched upon it's not where we are, it's where we're going. There's a lot of predictions that you can't make, but there's a lot of things that you can see are trending and are going to be more prominent in the future. Sustainability, that's important. Inclusivity, that's important. Championing small but mighty creators, that's important. We can't keep doing the same things that we've been doing because they're phasing out. And understanding that we can't predict the future, but we can see what consumers are saying that they want and the things that we aren't fulfilling as clients and brands and even platforms. So at the end of the day, we have to see, we know what's working now, but consumers and users are showing us okay, this is also what they want in the future. So pay attention to that and plan for that.
And I would just add that I think remoteness is one of the things that's going to stick around. The pandemic has forced us to try things that we hadn't really tried, at least en masse before, and having to be locked down and in our homes, working from home or doing, events from home or remote locations. I think that's one of the things that, even if we're not doing it to the scale that we're doing it right now, that's something that's going to stick. And we're seeing that already with certain companies allowing, all or a majority of their companies to spend some time at home versus being in the office. It's one way to cut down costs, so I feel like operationally it might make sense. It might make its way into more of the quote-unquote mainstream. And also services, I think we've been fortunate to be able to perhaps get more people to try our services because they have no choice but to get their hair done at home. And it's quite addictive. I feel like once you go home, you never go back to the salon. So I feel like that's one of the things that might stick around.
That is a great theory to test into the future. That maybe if everything happens, maybe the home is the new salon, possibly. I think that's something to definitely
Antonia,
think about.
I'll be one of your first customers to model that. If I could not have to go to the barbershop, I would love that. So.
Wow. So we did touch on inclusivity, right, Alex?
Yes.
So, I'm going to open up. Basically, we solicited a lot of questions on Instagram, and we had many questions on how can we be more inclusive, as businesses, as the representation in advertising, and content, which is what Spring does. How do we sort of become more inclusive to BIPOC people? How do we also, I think, fundamentally change the way we work so it's not just a form of woke washing and it's not just performative? Do you guys have anything to add to this?
I can only say from the more systemic corporate side of things, you know, hello, this is not a new issue, and folks have had plenty of time to really build a pipeline, so the fact that any company is caught by surprise is a little disingenuous. That said, and moving past that, I think there are obviously some real best practices to put in place to fix what has become a systemic problem. And obviously it doesn't just include putting a couple diverse candidates in strategic spots, which is happening in droves now, but it actually means building a pipeline, because that's how you're going to change the culture within these organizations, which is what changes the organizations. And, you know, on a very basic level, you can go at it from a perspective where it's your newest recruits, right? If you look at even just the percentage of graduates coming out of university, the top universities, over 50% are graduates of color. So if you just take that where there's no risk, right? You've no downside by just being representative in bringing in at the earliest stages a representation of new talent that you know resembles that of the world, you're already winning. And now you're grooming a new population within your organization with different perspectives, points of views, that makes for a much more dynamic and successful business overall. And they grow within the organization and become part of the culture of the organization. And then, you know, when you're looking from the top down, you also can take a view, which is, listen, it's, you know, it absolutely, every position should be filled on merit. But if you're going to look at a slate of candidates, how about just asking for a slate of candidates that's representative? If you're going to show me a slate of candidates, I want 50% to be diverse candidates. And with that, the right person will still get the job, but with that, we're forcing people to look beyond their comfort zones, look beyond the usual names and the usual suspects, and hopefully come up with some interesting surprises outside of the normal network that, again, starts to populate from within.
Yeah, I love that you said every single one of those sentiments, and I believe in everything you said wholeheartedly. And from a creative perspective, I always use this term selective seeking, that everyone has blind spots, right? And some people challenge their blind spots and some people acknowledge their blind spots, but others just continue to selectively see what they want to see. And inclusivity isn't a new conversation. I don't care what anyone says, we've been talking about this for years. And now I think it's more prominent because more people are coming out and saying this is what they need. Consumers, brands, users, employees, creatives, whatever the case may be, we're all talking about it. And as a creative, I would say to see more of this and to put more inclusivity in front of brands and to get more inclusivity in your creativity. I've been saying it for years, you have to challenge the norm. Challenge your storyboards, challenge brands when they ask to use creators, put more diverse slate of creators in front of brands, talk to brands about the narratives that exist right now because stigmas are no longer a thing. Stop putting moms at home watching the kids in your stories or commercials, challenge advertisers and understand that there are different ways of thinking. The norms that you once kind of perceived online and on TV and on your mobile phone and on your ads, those aren't the norms that are continuously happening now. So as a creative, we have to challenge those stories. As a creator, you have to put more diverse creators in your campaigns and listen to the people that you're working with. Also, like, your users are talking to you. Your consumers are talking to you. Open an app, turn on your phone, just listen to what everyone's saying, and your needs and understanding what needs to be met is being given to you right in front of your eye. You just have to scroll and you just have to listen.
Yeah, I second all of those sentiments on both sides, and I would just add, from a philosophical perspective, I feel like when it comes to inclusivity, one of the biggest questions that we all have to answer, especially the people on the top, is whether or not you actually care. Because if you do care, the effort that creating a more inclusive environment is, it'll almost flow naturally. I think for me, just looking at my platform is dedicated to Black women, and one can say that in certain senses, it's not inclusive. However, it's trying to meet a certain mission. I have a genuine investment in telling the stories of Black women. But even within our stories, even within our narratives, there's a lot of diversity there. And I think having a genuine curiosity to dig deeper and to, like Alex said, challenge our blind spots and see where else these stories can go. I feel like, you know, just having that sort of drive, it naturally just opens you up to more, to stepping outside of what you know. So yeah, I feel like doing a little bit of self-reflection and questioning your intentions and questioning how much you even care about really bringing inclusivity into your workplace or into what you do. That's the very first step into going down the journey or taking the journey of creating a more inclusive environment and a more inclusive world.
It's so interesting because recently, and as I don't know how, I've never thought of this term before, but someone used a term with me in a conversation and they said diversity of thought. And I was just like, what? Like, wow, I was so shocked by the idea that we look at diversity a lot as people. It's like a solid physical thing that you're placing specific people in a room. And yes, that is like the most important part of the conversation, but also like diversifying your thought narrative is very important. And I think for so long, I can even say with myself, sometimes we think like this is the right way to do things. Like, yeah, to get here, I have to do this. And to be successful, I have to write the story this way. And we know this works, so like, okay, let's keep doing it. However, like if you don't diversify your thought narrative, like the only person that's kind of failing at this point is you, because the world's gonna keep changing and things are gonna keep progressing. However, you're gonna continue doing what you think is the norm right now. And I don't know, that's what stuck with me. So I would say like when we're thinking of inclusivity and like diversity, if you can't understand it when it comes to people, then maybe the first thing you should do is challenge your diversity of thought and understand the different stories that are out there for you to read, to listen, to watch, and then maybe that'll help you understand how to approach diversifying people.
I think, yeah, that kind of thinking in pipeline and recruiting, as Ceci touched on, I think is important.
I would only add that it's not a social imperative purely. It is a business mandate. It's a business imperative. When you put diverse perspectives in a room, you get a more successful business outcome. And to Alex's point, it's race, it's gender, it's age, it's geography, it's background, it's religion. It's just really putting enough voices in the room that you have a clear understanding.
So obviously it's a tough time, I think, for people working in production or events or, you know, sort of things along those lines. We did have questions asking, you know, if you're a makeup artist, what can you be doing right now, I guess, to grow your business or grow your following or to pivot? I just wanted to, you know, open that up to ideas and content insights and so forth.
I mean, it's a large opportunity to kind of just experiment with your craft. There's a user on TikTok, her username is Dainty Funk. And I'm sorry, I'm not that great at makeup, but like I will watch these makeup tutorials to the end of me because it's kind of like an artistry. And watching you do your craft and watching how you work and how you create this like beauty exercise on other people and yourself, like that's intriguing. So I would say, like, I understand that it's hard because people aren't going outside and you're not making them up to present themselves to others. However, people are still trying to keep up with like different ways of having this avant-garde approach to beauty, whether it be on themselves or whether it be on yourself. So like, have some fun. Like, when have you ever had a chance to just sit at home and get a little weird? Like, play around with makeup. Like, it's a new artistry. There's a lot of people who are still intrigued by the idea of doing something new with beauty. And sometimes it takes one person to spark a new idea, and that person might be you.
Antonia, do you have anything to add?
Sure. I mean, I would just outright say that if you're a hairstylist, you can visit my website, upt.com. We are currently recruiting because we do have a lot of demand for hairstylists in New York and California, and we're even expanding beyond. So that's one thing that you can do to start to make money, because there is still a demand. But yeah, outside of that, I think there are opportunities. People are learning more. So you can jump on the DIY bandwagon and be one of the people that's teaching people how to do their hair, or at least guiding them through it. Yeah, and it's funny, like I perhaps even like reflect on what skills you have might be transferable or can be applied to projects or other things that you might not have even thought about that perhaps sit outside of your category.
Right. Also, I think I also wanted to touch on, I think, sustainability and clean beauty, because I think that's one of the sectors that's also hugely, I think, growing in this time of health and wellness consciousness. And we even had a question point out that a lot of Black women's beauty products tend to have more toxins or less clean, actually. So, how are ways we can sort of make our businesses, I think, fundamentally, I think, better in that sphere as well?
Well, just jump in from a corporate standpoint. I think traditional Black hair care products have all been sort of marketed with a very sort of monolithic profile attached to it, and that really dates back. I think it's sort of, the last bastion of segregation in beauty. And I think you have to think about, there are a lot of things now, clean and sustainable are table stakes in the beauty industry. All the majors are moving towards it. At the back of that bus is these products that have traditionally been marketed to women of color. And, I think you have to ask yourself, what are the preconceived notions around why that is? And a lot of it has to do with the feeling that it's a low-income consumer, the feeling that it's a consumer that is only a mass consumer, the feeling that it is, all of these business model and product innovations have become table stakes for the general market, somehow are not relevant to this consumer. And that's, again, if you had different people in the room and a more diverse community in the room, you would be able to break apart a lot of those notions and understand that there is, in fact, that this consumer is interacting with brands on a very high touch level and has high expectations for the brands, inclusive of ingredients and sustainability, and they should be able to access that within all of their beauty regimens as well.
I guess sort of dovetailing with that is there's obviously been more of a rise, I would say, the natural look. And how are you, I guess, from a content perspective, seeing that, and how is that aesthetic changing throughout the pandemic?
Yeah, it's from a content perspective, it's actually quite funny because I'm one of those natural look achievers. But it's interesting that it takes a lot of work to achieve the natural look. That was like me this morning.
You're
I was like,
this takes
are
work.
my cheeks glowing? Do I look moisturized? But I think that there are a lot of consumers out there who also are trying to pivot to showing that they still feel good in their skin. And I don't think that has to take away from the fact that you still feel good wearing color cosmetics. You still feel good wearing your hair natural. You still feel like, those are things that you see more people doing, so therefore you want to show ways that you feel good, comfortable doing that too. And all those words are subjective. Like, natural hair looks different for all of us in this room. Feeling good in your skin feels different for all of us in this room. Achieving the natural look looks different for all of us in this room. But I think it's interesting for me to see how people kind of define that differently from a content perspective. And it is something that everyone's trying to achieve, whether it's, you still have to put in work to feel good naturally. When I had hair, I would have to do twist outs every night, and I hated it, so I shaved it all off. But that was still me achieving my natural look. And I think that everyone has this idea of what that means for them. And it's kind of fun seeing how a lot of people translate that story via content, because it's different for all of us.
Antonia, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would, I'm a big lover of the natural look. I rarely wear makeup, although, for today I put on lipstick and filled in my eyebrows. But I think to Alex's point, it is different it is subjective, it is different for everyone. For me, it has to really be effortless. I hate things that take too much time. But But yeah, I think, yeah, I feel like leaning into what it means for you, taking the time to explore that, and just making sure that what you're doing is what feels right for you. I think that's the only thing that we all can do, and just sort of in terms of staying true to ourselves and feeling good about the choices that we're making.
So I think we're almost done on time. So just as a last sort of fun question, I think we've all sort of talked about today that beauty is about how we feel. It's such a personal thing. So what's the one beauty thing you're all kind of splurging on still and you feel is like your thing?
I just spent $50 on under eye cream. I don't know. That's the one thing. I care a lot about skin and firm skin and moisturized skin. So it'll always be that. I'm a person who's pivoting from this constant voice in my head when I was younger, which I don't agree with, but I understand now. Like, you don't have to wear so much makeup. And I'm like, all right, cool, so I'm gonna wear a lot of skincare. Like, I'm just gonna wear a lot of skincare. But that's something that makes me feel good as of late.
100% the at-home hairstylist. 100%.
I love that.
The alternative is not attractive.
For me, now that it's winter or almost winter, I'm going to splurge on some laser hair removal.
Yes, same.
Can we still do that?
We're gonna figure it out, because same.
Because they're at home.
Oh my God,
There's
yeah.
some places that are open here, and I found one that has the lasers for Black women. So yeah.
Oh, you've got to send it.
Yes, we'll take it. We'll do this.
Next frontier, at-home lasering.
Yes, here's to that. Cheers
App
to that.
ideas, you guys. We're giving them out. Well, thank you all so much. This was amazing. And I love having our hybrid, digital, physical, global perspectives in this talk. Thank you so much all for being here. This was such a great experience, so insightful. Appreciate everyone's perspective so much.
Thanks for having us.
It was nice to meet everyone virtually.
Nice meeting you. See you maybe
Thank you.
soon.